Imagine waking up on a Tuesday morning with zero responsibilities, no alarm, no commute, and the absolute certainty you never have to work again. Now, imagine that to earn that specific Tuesday, you spent the preceding 10 years declining almost every dinner invitation, skipping vacations, and filtering every single dollar you earned through a ruthless formula of extreme frugality. The FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, operates as a binding behavioral contract. It requires adhering to a strict set of terms for a decade or more in exchange for total time autonomy. Young adults are signing this contract in record numbers because the default alternative no longer computes. The standard expectation of working 40 hours a week for 40 years, hoping your health holds out until you reach 65, increasingly feels like an unreliable trap. FIRE offers an escape hatch. But opting out of the traditional workforce requires reading the fine print, specifically the psychological costs, before you commit your life to it. The core mathematical term of this agreement rests on a concept called the 4% rule. If you invest your money into a broad, diversified portfolio, historical market returns suggest you can withdraw 4% of that total every single year. Because your investments continue to grow, the principal rarely runs out. If your living expenses are $40,000 a year, you need a portfolio of $1 million. If your lifestyle requires $60,000 a year, that target expands to $1.5 million. If you want $80,000, you need $2 million in investments. Hitting those massive numbers within a decade requires pulling two levers simultaneously. You have to aggressively increase your income while slashing your spending to the bone. The standard advice is to save 10 to 15% of what you earn. This contract requires a savings rate of 50 to 70%. While the math is simple, the path is narrow. Successfully reaching the target requires a specific convergence of high earnings, low cost of living, and the psychological stamina to ignore a decade of cultural norms. Surviving the accumulation phase requires a grueling, decade-long exercise in behavioral economics. You are testing your capacity for delayed gratification. Think of the famous Stanford marshmallow test, where researchers offered children one treat immediately or two treats if they waited 15 minutes. The FIRE contract asks you to run that exact experiment, but it stretches the 15-minute wait across the entirety of your early adulthood. Your 20s and early 30s are statistically your peak social years. Fulfilling the terms of this agreement means navigating those years by living with multiple roommates, driving a 15-year-old car, and routinely declining spontaneous weekend road trips and milestone celebrations. Every dollar you refuse to spend on a restaurant or a concert ticket is redirected into index funds, bundles of stocks that track the broader market, to quietly compound and build your ultimate freedom number. Sacrificing the spontaneity and recklessness of your 20s is the literal, honest price of admission for buying back your time later. Psychologists use the term hedonic adaptation to describe how humans rapidly adjust to new circumstances, and this mechanism kicks in hard during the accumulation phase. The severe frugality and minimalist living required to save 70% of your income initially stings. But by month 6, cooking every meal at home and skipping vacations just becomes your normal, painless baseline. The burden of the sacrifice fades over time. Hedonic adaptation doesn't stop once you reach the finish line. It eventually begins to neutralize the euphoria of the early retirement dream itself. People who cross the finish line and quit their jobs at age 30 frequently hit a severe boredom trap. When the heavy structure, daily demands, and built-in socialization of a career vanish overnight, it often triggers a sharp identity crisis. Humans are neurologically wired to seek out purpose and solve complex problems. A massive bank account and an endless stretch of uninterrupted leisure time cannot satisfy that biological imperative. Completing the contract successfully grants you freedom from mandatory labor. It does not grant you freedom from the fundamental human need for meaning. This realization forces a redefinition of the entire movement. The retire early portion is a misnomer. The actual pursuit is time autonomy, the ability to control your schedule, rather than the permanent avoidance of work. Working 40 hours a week because your rent is due next Friday is a state of desperation. Choosing to work on a difficult project purely for passion, intellectual challenge, or social connection is a state of total psychological freedom. This slider graphic breaks down the spectrum of how people renegotiate those terms. On the far left is lean FIRE. This requires the smallest investment portfolio, allowing you to quit your day job sooner, but it demands a Spartan, minimalist lifestyle in perpetuity. On the opposite end is Fat Fire, which requires a massive portfolio to support high consumption and luxury travel. In the middle is Barista Fire, a hybrid model where you rely on investments for the bulk of your needs, but utilize a low-stress part-time job to cover base expenses and preserve social structure. The specific version a person chooses acts as a mirror for their core values. It requires them to deliberately design their ideal life, rather than blindly chasing a target bank balance. The practical lesson here applies even if you have no desire to pursue early retirement. You do not need to maintain a punishing 70% savings rate to extract real value from this framework. Pushing your savings rate from 10% to 30 or 30% can dramatically shave years off a traditional 40-year working timeline, buying you flexibility well before traditional retirement age. The underlying value of the movement is the absolute refusal to sleepwalk through financial decisions and societal expectations. It forces you to audit exactly what you are trading your time for. Financial independence is not a sudden emotion you unlock when you cross a finish line. It is the compounding result of making deliberate, highly intentional choices over the course of your entire life.